Hello, welcome to the Jenkins Documentation Office Hours. Today is February 20th, and around the table we have myself, Kevin Martins, Bruno Verachton, Chris Stern, Soham Juneja, Birajit, Meg McRoberts, and Pratik Main, and Mark Waite is joining us as well. So, like I was saying, we have a full house today. This is great. I'm really excited to see so many folks here.
And I'm going to guess that Pratik's last name is pronounced Mane. Pratik, can you help me with that? Oh, well. Onward, Kevin.
Fair enough. Cool. So just to highlight the agenda today, I wanted to point out that Kosuke's Kawaguchi's Spotlight's been published. Continuing the discussion on from last session with Meg about the documentation developer experience and the instructions there. Some documentation fixes that are still needed. Wanted to highlight the command palette blog post that went out recently and that we updated the docs to reflect that. If Chris, if you're willing to give any updates or share any other news about Google Summer of Code that's not already listed here, that's great. The Chinese documentation site and localization and what that now is kind of turned into, since it was planned one thing and now it's different. LTS releases previously and upcoming. The Jenkins Contributor Summit. Some recent work done for Jenkins.io. The Alpha Omega documentation project potential and where that is at. And then discussion that was started with Antoine a couple months ago about the plugin developer documentation being updated. And then finally, provided we have time, Blue Ocean deprecation, what that's going to look like, where we're at with that. Any other topics that need to be added to the agenda for anyone, or anything that anyone wants to make sure we discuss? Okay. So then we'll get started. So we published the contributor spotlight for Kosuke Kawaguchi, creator of Jenkins. A lot of lovely backstory here. And he tells the journey of how he got to the point of making Jenkins, the struggles and challenges that he faced when creating Jenkins, and what he is really happy with, proud of, and what he's looking forward to with the future of Jenkins. So a lot of great content there. Thanks very much to Kosuke for taking the time to interview with me and talk about all these things. If you haven't had a chance yet, definitely take your time to read it. Next on the agenda, so the documentation developer experience. So Meg, I was looking through the notes here and the issue that you created for this. Has anything changed or anything that you've found since last meeting, or would you like to give kind of a quick recap for things? Otherwise,
Yeah. No, I fear I've been distracted and haven't been back playing with it very much. So,
And Mark I have to report as well. I did nothing to help Meg. So while I said last time, and talk is cheap, obviously, sorry, Meg, we'll try another time.
yeah, that's me. I thought, oh, Mark is going to bail me out. So isn't that a fine attitude? So
okay, it's
I
such a
could go read a good book or something, you know?
Uh,
But
And yeah, and I looked through the things you had shared and what was discussed here, and I found that I hadn't really done this sort of like setup again in a while. So I
yeah,
already have the up-to-date Docker version. I don't have that and I'm sure a lot of people were having similar findings, but yeah, definitely something to improve. And I appreciate the idea of adding stuff like the Docker installation instructions and just
like,
basic setup that's not currently there. So,
it's the most tedious stuff. If there's anything more interesting to do, I always ignore these things. So then you're forced to do it and you're reminded it's necessary. So,
yep. Mark?
yep.
well, so we've got several people on the call who may have recently done this same step. And so maybe what we ought to do is ask if they had similar issues, tell us. And if they didn't, okay, then we got to diagnose it for Meg. But Pratik, I believe, is interested. I think that Birajit was interested. Soham, I believe, is also interested. So we've got a group of interested people. And if any of them have encountered the same problems, maybe we do one session of Doc's Office Hours Asia, and try to diagnose it together as a group. So I guess the first question is to any of the other contributors, have you had problems starting a development environment for the Jenkins.io site on your system? And it's okay if you haven't or if you haven't tried it.
I don't have a problem with it. I just tried today.
Okay, so Chris just did it. All right. Okay, so there's one.
Right?
And I sometimes have this kind of problem but I have a strange setup working under WSL Debian with Windows and in a shared directory, and most of the time it's a mess. I have to clone another time in a clean directory, not shared with Windows. So I'm an edge case, I guess.
And Mark is not interested in solving Bruno's configuration. Just so we're clear. I run Windows, but I'm not a WSL user, and I'm certainly not doing development of DocSite on WSL. Soham, you said, I think I saw that Soham indicated no problem there. So it may be best, Meg, that just you and me will do it, and we'll do it at a time that works for the two of us.
Okay, sounds good in your copious free time.
Absolutely copious.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate that. Yeah, and I mean, even if it's even if we do add the Docker installation instructions, it might help someone down the line. So little things like that we can always incorporate into it, even if we don't change the full set of instructions. So
Right. Yeah. I think it probably just needs a couple little tweaks.
yeah. So
And I'm not a super tinker with tools, so the possibility that I'm doing something stupid is real high here. So
no, really, that's okay. We have all been there. I know I've done it several times.
yeah.
So all right. Then next up on the agenda, so documentation fixes that have been needed. So the docs office hours were incorrectly described. I did submit a pull request earlier to fix that, so now that's updated.
Oh, good. I had trouble with my pull request too, so I will just cancel my pull request.
Yeah, no worries, Meg. Yeah, I saw that in the agenda, and I realized that it very recently changed and is no longer accurate, so I took care of that. So now it's properly listed and everything. Everything else remains the same, but it's now recognized as just the one time every 2 weeks instead of 2 times every week. So that's all.
Yeah.
And then Mark, did you add this one regarding disabling the search indexing?
I did, because we have candidates who. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
Can I volunteer to do this? I don't think it's like I don't want to do that. Anyone has to do it yet.
Okay, even better. All I wanted was a volunteer. So if you're willing, that's great for me. I just first, I guess, key question, Chris, are you okay with the idea that we put a robots.txt there that excludes all indexing of the site?
Yep.
Okay, so if that's okay, you will certainly do it 10 or 100 times faster than I would, and probably much better than that for a new contributor. So if you're willing to do it, thank you. That's thank you, not just thank you, but multiple thank yous.
Okay.
By the way, there is a new trend, which is having an llm.txt on the root of the website. Yeah, I know. Why?
Okay.
I don't know if you know about that, Chris, but if that would be helpful, I have a few tools to do so, but maybe it's too early.
Do you think we should? It doesn't matter. We're open source anyway.
Yeah. So just do robots.txt. That's enough. Yeah. Large language models, if they're trolling our data, I say let them have it.
Yeah.
Great.
Fair enough. That's good to know. I'm glad. Thanks to Oleg for catching that in the first place, and detecting that. That's helpful. Now we can do. And thank you to Chris for volunteering to fix that. Next up, so with the 2.492.1 release, the search in Jenkins was updated to be the command palette. This was a new function and feature that Jan Farachik, Tim Jacome, others have been working on. And so now the search has been replaced with command palette. It's a more robust and featureful way to search. There have been some feedback provided to Jan and others in the ticket that was originally created to push that, but we did want to make sure that it was visible. It's nice. It's still got some room for improvement in terms of what it offers. But that's something that they're already aware of. It's not something that they're ignoring or completely blind to in this case. So there's still work to be done there to improve it and increase what its functionality can be. But it's nice. It's a little bit more friendly for users to find, and it has things like icons that help indicate status of jobs, and a lot of the functionalities that were part of the existing search have been incorporated in there. So there's not a complete loss of functionality there. And we've also updated the documentation in Jenkins to reflect that. So now the search box is now the command palette documentation. So I've updated things here, provided updated screenshots as well to include the what it now looks like, including the icons and various things like that. And the open search support does still work the same as it did. I confirmed with Jan that didn't get taken away. So that's been left as is.
Nice.
And this was also sent out. We wanted to make sure that there was visibility on this. So we also sent out the blog post as a tweet and LinkedIn post so that it's more aware and more visible elsewhere than just within Jenkins. So next up, so Google Summer of Code. So it was officially announced just before FOSDEM, so that's really exciting. The org application, the Mentor org application is due by next Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. So, or they're announcing it.
It was it's announcing next week.
Right. We've already submitted, right? And Chris, you can confirm we've submitted, and Bruno, yes. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry, the announcement is next week. So, waiting on bated breath to see what they say. But we've got some great activity here. Chris, do you want to share any notes or any updates or anything here?
Yeah, sure. So we have some updates about some new mentors and the proposals for new projects they've brought with us. So first one is a chatbot plugin for answering Jenkins related questions. It's mostly Jenkins resources related questions. So it's not like how to write a pipeline or any code for it. So it's just to locate where to find things. Also, the second project idea is about improving Tecton client plugin, but I'm not familiar with that plugin at all. So I may need to find out more about that one first and talk to the potential mentors. So the new mentors are Srinivas, and the second one is I think so. I'm not sure how to pronounce it though. It's like Bod Betty, so kind of like that. Also for documentation related project ideas, we have I think we have two at least. So one for version doc site or the retooling, completing the retooling of the version docs site, and also the second one is for the stories site, because like right now it's kind of like I think it's like if we keep it this way, it would be hard to find out how it was built end to end, and also because like right now what we're missing when we encounter some issues with its configuration is like we don't have much operational log surrounding like how to run it, so we may need to retool it, rebuild it, and maybe modernize it a little bit, even though it's not too outdated in terms of technology. But I think we may want to standardize like how the story site is done with the other sites to like contributors by, but I'm not sure. That's open to discussion. And that's about it.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. The creation of stories.jenkins.io was a donated effort. I'm very grateful for the person who created it, but they're no longer involved in the Jenkins project. So you're right. It surely needs a refresh in terms of its tooling. Thanks very much for being willing to consider it.
I talked to him too. He's okay with it.
Perfect. Even better. Yeah. And then I know we had someone recently actually wanting to share their story, and they ran into some issues trying to submit it. So I was able to work with them, thankfully, to circumvent all that and get the story submitted. But yeah, it could definitely use a nice refresh in that sense. So thank you, Chris. Next up, there's the Chinese documentation site and Chinese localization plugin. So this was being discussed last year as something to retire. However, new findings and new observations and discoveries from Stefan Speaker, I believe, indicated that not so easy and not such a good idea after all. Mark, do you want to speak to this one a bit more? Or
Yeah, so it was,
sure.
I think the original catalyst was it's not being maintained, and that's still the reality. It is still not maintained. But the counter thing was when I discovered there are 58,000 installations of the Chinese localization plugin. The Chinese localization plugin is a unique plugin. A group of Chinese Jenkins users banded together many years ago and created a dedicated plugin for Chinese localization. Every other localization is done right inside Jenkins core. So we don't know, we have no indication of which localizations are most popular and which are least popular. But the Chinese localization as a dedicated plugin, its install count is a hint of people who might be using Chinese. And given that we've got 275,000 or more installations, 58,000 is a significant chunk of the total installations. So the idea was, hey, should we retain Chinese localization? But talking with various people, Runsha, Chris, those two conversations were with people who are native Chinese speakers, and yet said, I'm not sure if the Chinese users actually need a Chinese localization because they probably read an awful lot of things in English anyway. So it's still an open question, and we don't have any data to make a decision one way or the other, as far as I can tell.
Can I make a suggestion? I just want to know, like, if it's feasible to add native built-in Chinese localization in Jenkins. I can help with that, but we should at the same time retire the plugin.
So it certainly is possible. So Jenkins has facilities to support Chinese localization in core. Absolutely.
No,
Go ahead.
I can help with that one.
Okay, so the challenge for me is the transformation from the Chinese localization plugin into Jenkins core would be a bunch of text movement, right? A bunch of text transformation where it gets copied from the localization plugin into the correct properties files inside Jenkins core.
Or we could do it from scratch, so I can start from beginning. So I know Chinese, so I don't need to rely on like some extra material for that.
Okay, I see. Okay. So yeah, certainly there is no shame. Right now, the Chinese localization of Jenkins is inactive, right? There's been no improvement to it in many years. So if you start translating messages in Jenkins core into Chinese, particularly simplified Chinese character set, that's great.
I can do both traditional and simplified at the same time. So it's not too, it's just I can just use Google Translate to translate the two.
Okay, because in that case, it's just two different character sets for the same language. I have to remember that it's got it. Okay, thanks, Chris.
They're just written different ways.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thanks, Mark, for helping explain all that a bit more. And thanks, Chris, for offering and having some good ideas about that. Sounds like it might be a bit more feasible than we thought. So, cool. Next up, so LTS releases. We had 2.492.1 release just before last session on February 5th. And then in just a couple weeks, we'll have 2.492.2 coming out. Chris Stern's release lead. So thanks to Chris for being release lead on that. And the changelog and upgrade guide are up for review in the pull request that I've created, linked here. Thanks to Mark for already providing the review there. Jenkins Contributor Summit in FOSDEM happened back at the beginning of the month, so that was great, really successful. Lots of work done in the breakout groups and discussions overall. We'll have a blog post recap to highlight the Contributor Summit and everything that kind of happened there and during the FOSDEM. So Mark will submit that, and we'll be able to publish that once everything's cleared and taken care of there. And then for recent work, so this is something I want to highlight, just Birgit's here, so I feel a lot better about this now, but Birgit's been submitting a lot of work for the Jenkins.io site, lots of improvements and inclusions, so thank you very much, Birgit, for all that work that you're doing. There is one pull request right now that is to an address. It addresses an issue that's currently open in Jenkins.io's repo about updating the master branch of Jenkins.io to main. This is in line with the inclusive naming initiative that we have been working on since for the last couple of years. So right now it's a big change. That would be something that could affect a lot of other places and sites. So I'm going through and testing right now, basically my own local mock-up of what happens if we do that. I haven't run into anything very serious yet, but there are a lot of places to test and check and search for. So I'm trying to do my best to make it as extensive as possible in terms of what that might include, what areas to find. There's already been a few that I found that I've already submitted to Birgit and worked with him for. So thank you for collaborating, and thank you for working on this and being having the ambition and the drive to do this. It is something that we need to be very cautious about, and if it does happen to cause any problems, we'll need to revert it as opposed to let it sit and get work on. So again, nothing to discourage, but it is a little bit more serious than some of the other pull requests that have come through. So great to have. Thank you very much for your enthusiasm, and we'll continue working on this and make sure that everything's good, as good to go as we possibly can. So yeah.
Welcome.
And sorry, go ahead, Birgit.
No, I'm saying welcome for it. Thanks.
Great. Thank you. And yeah, and it's been nice. I've been able to submit the updates and some things that I found to Birgit's fork. So it's been going really well, and it's been great working with you. So yeah, looking forward to more. For the Alpha Omega documentation project idea, Mark, you want to speak to this one? I know that they haven't made final decisions yet, so there's still time, but I don't know what the reality is for this specific project.
Yeah, nor do I. Michelle Martineau, one of the players at Alpha Omega, is on vacation for 2 weeks. So I'm not expecting any answer even before our next session. I'll ping them just to ask, but I really don't expect a response just because Michelle's out and Michael Windsor is very, very busy.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you very much. And then the next topic here is the plugin developer documentation. So this was, again, a topic brought by Antoine Naveau at one of the previous Docs Office Hours sessions back in November-ish. There's a lot of pages in the developer docs for plugin development that are work in progress. So things that don't necessarily need to be there. There are some pages that don't need that work in progress signifier, but they still have them. And other ones that don't have content need to have content before that can be removed. And this would go a long way in helping newer users and newer plugin developers get started and get their feet under them with how that would work with Jenkins. We do need to figure out how it can be updated and what kind of information we want to include in that. And there are existing tutorials like the improve a plugin tutorial, but that's not necessarily for heavier maintainers or developers. It is for anyone to be able to come in and improve a plugin and help modernize it. That does not speak to plugin development from the ground up necessarily. So maintaining a plugin tutorial is another thing that has been discussed that we could include, that could be added to this documentation that would help with users. So more to come with that. And I plan on working with Antoine a little bit more closely in the coming months. So I'm hoping that once we have a bit more of a connection, we can discuss that idea further and see what he has in mind for how we could help and how that documentation could be improved. So much more to come on that. And then the last topic I have here is the blue ocean deprecation. So blue ocean is not something that's necessarily actively maintained. There are security updates when necessary, but we have been looking at what the future looks like for Jenkins without blue ocean. So things like pipeline graph view, pipeline stage view, there are alternatives for some aspects of blue ocean, not all, but for pipeline visualization, there are alternatives that have been developed a lot in the last couple of years. And pipeline graph view, for instance, was improved significantly as a result of 2024's FOSDEM and the contributor summit work that we had there. So we're looking at that. The Blue Ocean tutorials have been moved to the bottom of the tutorials page, along with a status note indicating their current maintenance and just where they're at with everything. And the statuses have the notes that are on the Blue Ocean pages have also been updated to indicate alternatives, like I said, for pipeline step view, pipeline graph view, so that we are encouraging users to look elsewhere. The documentation's still going to exist for the time being, but it is something we're planning for. I'm working with Mark on how we can do that, what kind of things we need to look out for, and where we need to be sure we're covering our bases on all of this. And that also, again, more to come with that. But the future does look like Blue Ocean deprecation. So more to come, but we'll discuss it more in detail once we have a better idea of what that's going to look like and when that's going to happen more concretely. So and that was all I had for the agenda today. Is there any other topics that anyone wants to add to the agenda, discuss before we stop the recording, or anything else? Nope. Okay, that's cool. So then thank you everyone for joining today. I really appreciate it. It makes me happy to see so many folks involved in joining the meeting here and interested in documentation and Jenkins.io maintenance. It's really nice to see. I hope everyone has a nice rest of their day and continues. If they're interested in any other docs discussions or anything at all, our Gitter channel is always open and available. You can send messages there, tag me. If you're interested in working on anything on Jenkins.io that you don't see an existing issue for, feel free to create one. And if you want to work on it, by all means, we're more than happy to have you. I'm always available for help and guidance in any way that I can provide. And the community is really great at interacting and engaging with other people. So if you have questions, concerns, and it's the middle of the night for me here on the East Coast in the US, someone else is available, I'm sure. But yeah, it's really nice to have everyone here, and we hope to see you back next time and everywhere else as well. So I'll stop the recording in a second. It'll be available 24 to 48 hours, posted on YouTube and the community discourse channel. And until next time, we'll see you then. Thank you very much. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.